Okay, just a quick request. So kindly pin the. I think most of you would have attended a lot of webinars, right? So kindly pin the presenter to always see your screen, and I request you all to kindly mute your mic so that there is no interference in the audio as well. All right? Okay, great. Okay, so just give me 1 minute. So Richard, are you ready?
Yeah, sir, I'm ready.
Okay, brilliant. So Richard, take it away.
Okay, sir. Sure. So, hello guys. Good afternoon. Yeah. So I guess we can start right away. Well, before we start, I might ask, what do you know about quantum computing, and what do you know about quantum, basically? Why were you interested in this workshop? Come on, please use the chat box. It's our only way to interact. Please, the answer might not be right. It's fine. Please give me the knowledge you know about quantum computing. Curious to know about new technologies. That's nice. Anyone else? Next level of AI. Yeah, that's true. Quantum computing can bring a good revolution in AI, and AI can contribute much to quantum computing as well. Just interested. So, computing based on quantum theory. Exactly. That's what quantum computing is all about. We use quantum mechanics to perform computing. So it's really exciting when you get actually into the coding part and the working behind it. Quantum or discrete packets. Yeah, that's right. That's true. Not that out. You'll be needing it on the course of our training. Want to know about quantum computing? You will know about quantum computing by the end of these 3 days. You will more or less be in good, well versed in quantum computing. All right. So if there is no more questions, I'll just start my session. I'll start by sharing my screen. So do everyone see my screen? Please type yes in chat box. To perform complex operations. Yeah, true. Yeah, okay, great. So let's begin by first, before we get into the theory, let's set up the prerequisites, okay? So first, you need a IBM Q account. So what you do is, you'll go to Google or any other browser you like. You can either do with me, or you will have a recorded version of this video. You can do it seeing that video. So when you type IBM Q in your Google search bar, you will be getting this. And when you click on it, well, I'm actually signed in actually. So for those who didn't sign in, I'll open a private window. Sorry. Now I'll type IBM Q. All right, you might get a intro page like this, and you can give on your Google account to get started. It will ask you Google account. You can give your email and a password, and you will get signed in into your IBM Q account. It will send you a verification email. Once you click that, you will be signed in into your IBM Q account, and you will be needing your IBM Q account for accessing the quantum computer. First, what is IBM Q? IBM Q is basically IBM Quantum Experience. What is that? Well, IBM is a major software company. How many of you have heard about IBM? How many of you have heard about IBM? Great. So IBM have developed a quantum computer by itself. Actually, two companies are competing in quantum computing. IBM, another one is Google. Well, IBM and Google always competing in who makes the best quantum computer. IBM first created quantum computer with real atoms, then it used superconducting atoms. Now Google created recently a 60 qubit quantum computer. We'll talk about what is qubits, but let's say Google is now in the lead of quantum computing. Google has created its own quantum computer, which is 60 qubit quantum computer, and they were able to attain quantum supremacy. So what is quantum supremacy? Quantum supremacy is something you can do in quantum computer which you cannot do in a normal classical computer. For example, in which IBM have developed, they can only perform the same operations in a better way in which we can do in our computer. But quantum supremacy is Google had generated random numbers in, I guess it's 3 seconds of, 3 minutes, I guess. It has generated the random numbers in 3 minutes. It's quantum computer, in which a classical computer would take 3 years, they claim. Google claims that a classical computer will take you 3 years to generate the random numbers, which it generated in 3 minutes. However, IBM says that it can be generated in a classical computer in 3 days, but instead it attains quantum supremacy, which is really a great breakthrough, I would say. And one major advantage of IBM is they are giving us their quantum computers to use in cloud. So we can basically access IBM's quantum computer and run our own code in their quantum computer and learn about the operations and learn about the working of the quantum computer. That is the awesome thing about IBM. So you need an account to access the quantum computer. That's why I'm going to go to quantumcomputing.ibm.com, and then you can create your own account. Once you have done creating your own account, you can go to, I guess I have not yet signed in. Let me sign in. All right, give me a minute. I'll sign in and I'll be back. I don't want you to see my password, so that's why I'm. Just give me a minute. I guess I'll create my own account now, so you can see your own perspectives. Okay, I'll create my own account then using a different Google account. So once you click sign in, you will be directed to a page like this, and you can give your institution over here. Well, I'll just give my own institution, and over here you can give learning purposes. And you can click the ones if you want any. I don't want any of them, so I'll just click continue. All right, so that's it. Once you signed in into your quantum computing platform, it will look like this. You will get a screen like this. In here, you will have something like a token, in which you can't see your token. I can actually see it, but you can't actually share your token to others. So what you're going to do is you're going to copy your token, and then you'll go to your desktop and create some file. I've created a file called token.txt in which I have pasted my token. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to copy the token from your IBM Quantum experience and paste it into your separate file called token.txt. That's the prerequisite before we code. You need to create an IBMQ account, take the token, paste it in a token.txt file. So am I clear? How can send? Do you have any doubts about creating your IBMQ account and taking the token? None. Okay. So once you create your IBM account, you will be having your token, copy it, paste it in a token.txt file. The reason I'm not opening my token.txt file is if anyone sees my token, they can access my quantum computer. They can access my part of their quantum computer. They can basically access my account. You need to keep it secret. All right. So should I explain again to someone? If you want me to explain again, I'll gladly explain again. Yeah, I need to explain again. All right. So let me go through it again. I'll click a new window. Just type in IBM Q in your Google and you'll get this one. Click on it. You'll be directed to a page like this. And over here, you will have something called sign up. Well, I'm searching for sign up. Launch IBM Quantum Experience. All right. Yeah, here is it. If you're directed to this page, click on launch IBM Quantum Experience. Then you'll be directed here and you can click on Google account. I'm going to sign in with Google. That's why I'm clicking on Google account. Sign in with Google. It will show me my accounts. If I enter some random account and well, it's not my real password. I'm just typing something randomly. It's not going in actually. So when you did an sign in with your original account, it will go in and you will get a screenshot. I'll show you a screenshot maybe. Yeah, you will get a page like this. This one, you will when you click this sign into IBM Quantum Experience. This one. When you click on Google, you will get a screenshot similar to this. You will get a page like this, and once you fill in that and click on go further, you will get a page like this one. You will get this page. Once you sign in, you will basically get this page. Signing in is not a really complicated operation. It's really simple. And you need to copy your token, then create a file called token.txt in your desktop or somewhere else. So I'll just open my token.txt. So this is my token.txt. You need to create a file called token.txt and paste the token. You just copied it into here, and then we can save the token and close it. That's it. So was I clear? Was I clear now? I'm sorry I can't do the whole operations right away because I have it already. All right, so I'm clear. No one has any doubts. All right. So going back, we need Google Colab for this. So how many have you heard about Google Colab? How many of you have heard about Google Colab? No. So Google Colab is basically you can go to Google and type Colab. And it will direct you to Google Colab. Well, Google Colab is Google's supercomputer to help us write Python code in their supercomputer. We don't need a separate computer to write our Python code. It will give their supercomputer for us to write our own Python code in their supercomputer and run our code in their supercomputer. So when you open Google Colab, it will give you a screen like this, and then click on New Notebook. You'll be directed here. A new notebook, Colab notebook, will be opened. Yeah. So we are basically accessing Google supercomputer right now. I'm basically accessing Google supercomputer right now. To give you a better explanation, I'll zoom my screen. And when I click on connect, it is connecting to the Google supercomputer using cloud platform. So from my laptop, from my place, from right where I'm sitting, I'm accessing Google supercomputer. And I can write Python code in the supercomputer, only Python code. I'll say this was actually developed for machine learning practitioners and deep learning practitioners because they would need high level of data. And why am I using Colab now is because you don't need to install Python and go through the process of installing a Qiskit, a library called Qiskit in your computer, because setting up for quantum computing in your computer is really a tiring task. That's why I'm using Google Colab for simplicity. You're not gonna take advantage of their RAM exactly, but we need their RAM actually. So we can run Python code here. I can either give control enter to run Python code, or I can just click it to run the Python code here. So Google Colab is a supercomputer. We can access a supercomputer to run our Python code. We are going to use this Google Colab. You can just type on Colab in Google and it will direct you to this. And I'm going to use a notebook. I'll say open notebook. And I'll click on GitHub. Whenever you say open notebook in Google Colab, it will show you this option. You need to click on GitHub. And over here, you can give the name as Rosario Lampucci. I'm going to my repository. I'm going to grab a code from my GitHub. So if you don't know about GitHub, don't panic. Just give this name in your GitHub, Rosario Lampucci, in this GitHub search path. And over here, select quantum computing. And inside here, select quantum computing 1.ipynb. And I clicked on this open in new window. So it has been opened for me. So what I did was I gone to file, open notebook, GitHub. I typed Rosario Lampucci in the search bar. I can even give you that in the chat box. Okay. So you need to type it. Once you type it, click on the repositories and click on quantum computing. And over here, select quantum computing 1 and click on this one, open notebook in new tab. That's all you need to do. That's all is the prerequisites about. The other tasks are pretty simple. These are the tiring tasks actually. The other tasks are already pretty simple. So all clear until now. Should I explain it again? If you are practicing it side by side, tell me, I will wait for doing the next operation. So it says page not found. Which one, GitHub? All right, if it says your page not found, I'll give you another link. You can download that code right away from. When you go to the link, it will have a link for Git Collaboratory as well. You can just click open in Colab and it will open in here. Here you can see it, right? It's saying open in Colab. When you go to this link, it will show you open in Colab. Click on it and it will be open in Google Colab. So I'll give you the link as well for you less complexity.
Richard, after
Yes,
this, we will be sharing the video immediately to them, so they can look at the video and practice it. Okay. So you can listen to the video now. You can just watch the video. After this meeting is over, we'll be sharing this entire video to you, so you can practice on your own. Yeah. And
yeah,
when you have
that's better.
Post it in our group, in our WhatsApp group, and we will help you out. Okay. Yeah. Good.
All right. So it's not really a big task, guys. You need to open this file, quantum computing 1.ipynb in Google Colab. That's it. That's all you need to do. Other things are simple relatively. So let's start. What is quantum computing? This is where we are actually starting. These are all the prerequisites. Actually, in all other fields, setting up the prerequisites is a bit of a hard task. But once it's done, it's really exciting. The other tasks are really exciting. So let's start. What is quantum computing? Quantum computing is the use of quantum mechanical phenomena such as superposition and entanglement to perform computation. Computers that perform quantum computation are known as quantum computers. So have you heard about superposition and entanglement? Anyone? Have you heard the words superposition, entanglement? I'm not able to hear anything. Is anyone facing the same? Well, make sure you turn on your volume, I guess. It might be the problem. All right. So back to the topic. Have you heard about superposition and entanglement? If not, don't worry. We'll look at it. And someone explained quantum. Someone told about quantum. When I asked about quantum, someone told that's the minimum amount of any physical entity. Someone told that. So quantum is a minimum amount of any physical entity involved in an interaction. That's what a quantum is. Quantum is a tiniest amount of any entity. It can be an atom, it can be an electron, it can be a quark, which is a minimum part of an electron. Everything is quantum basically. And what is classical computing? Well, classical computing is me computing in my laptop is called as classical computing. Well, you can better define it as bits. Classical computing use bits. Bits means, well, in your house, you will be having fan switch and light switch. When you switch on the switch, it actually gives a one value, on value. 0 stands for off and 1 stands for on in bits. In bits, there are only zeros and 1. 0 stands for off and 1 stands for on. So when you switch on your fan switch or light switch, it will go to on to off. When you switch it on, 1 will be passed. So the fan will be on. And when you switch it off, 0 will be passed. So the fan will be off. So that's why classical computing is a bit limited. We can't do much things in classical computing. But we have already accomplished a lot of things in classical computing. But it's actually limited to bits, 0 or 1. Either of these two operations only. We can't do more than that. However, quantum computing uses qubits instead of bits. Qubits are a combination of 0, 1. Let me say my fan is both running and not running. It's sort of similar to that. So in your classical computing, bits are 0, 1. Quantum computing, you will have an arrow mark in which it can be here. The arrow mark can be here, which is 30% of 0, 70% of 1. It can be here, 40% of 0, 60% of 1. It will be percentages of 0 and percentages of 1. It will not be completely 0 or completely 1. That's the advantage of quantum computing actually. So let me tell you a few topics about quantum computing. So before that, let me tell you what's a qubit. As I told you, a bit is 0 and 1. A qubit is a combination of 0 and 1. If you have understand about qubit, we can move on. Superposition is the sum of 2 or more quantum states. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to explain it right away. Don't worry. So did you understand what is a qubit? A bit is either 0 or 1. A qubit is a combination of both 0 and 1. It can be 30% 0, 70% 1, or 50% 0, 50% 1, or 40% 0, 60% 1. It is a combination of both zeros and ones. That's what a qubit is. Bit can be either in 1 or 0 only. Did you understand? What is a qubit? Qubit stands for a quantum bit, by the way. Quantum computers are built by qubits. All right, so let's move on. So the first topics will be superposition. I'll start with superposition. Well, have anyone heard about the Schrodinger's cat experiment? This is a great experiment, actually. Have anyone heard about it? Once more, all right. So what I was saying is classical computers are built using bits. So what are bits? Bits are basically zeros and ones. 0 stands for off, 1 stands for on. So whenever you're switching on a fan, or let me say, whenever I'm switching on and off my mic in my Google Meet, when I'm switching it off, it's actually passing a 0 value to it. When I'm switching it on, it's actually passing a 1 value to it. Just imagine it like that. Classical computing uses zeros and ones. However, quantum computing uses both combinations of zeros and ones. For example, classical computer can only have either 0 or 1. 0 means a current will be passed. 1 means the current will be passed. 0 means the current will not be passed. However, quantum computing, a qubit, will use combinations of zeros and ones. Well, it can be 30% of 0 and 70% of 1, or 50% of 0, 50% of 1, 40% of 0, 60% of 1. So it will be proportions of both 0 and 1. However, here, a bit will be 100% 0 or 100% 1. A qubit will be a certain percentage of 0, a certain percentage of 1. So that's what a qubit is actually. That is the difference between classical bit and qubit. So classical bits is used in classical computers, like your laptops, my laptops, your phones, and every other electronic objects. However, quantum computing uses qubit, which is only available in very few quantum computers, which is available in the world. All right, now it's clear? All right. So how many of you heard about Schrodinger's cat experiment? So what is that experiment about? Can anyone tell me? Great. Naren says she have heard, and Pratiksha says she have heard. So what is the experiment about? I'm glad I'm having someone who knows about Schrodinger's cat. It's about whether a cat is dead or not. Yeah, that's right. Well, the basic experiment is, I will have a cardboard box in my home or somewhere. I will have a cardboard box, and I will save say a decaying radioactive material in the cardboard box. When the radioactive level reaches certain point, it will a hammer will be there, which will released, and the poison glass, the poison bottle will be opened, will be bursted out, and the cat will be dead. So I'm having three things inside my box: a cat, a radioactive material which is decaying and the radioactive is increasing, and a hammer and a poison bottle. So when the radiation goes above a certain limit, when the decaying of the radioactive material and the radiation goes above a certain limit, the hammer will drop and the poison will be released and the cat will die. So be sure about the experiment. I'm having a cat, a hammer, a radioactive material, and poison. So when a radioactive material decays and the radioactive reaches a certain point, the hammer will be dropped. The hammer will hit the poison bottle and the cat will be dead. All right? So am I clear about the experiment? That is what it's containing in the box. All right? So what Schrodinger is saying is, Schrodinger is a famous scientist. What is he saying is, whenever an observer observes the cat, whenever someone opens the box only, the cat becomes alive or dead. When the cat is inside the box, when the cat is actually inside the box, let's say 1 hour has passed. 1 hour is enough time that the radioactive material may be decayed, may not be decayed at the certain limit. So it's enough time actually. So what Schrodinger is saying is, after 1 hour, until someone observes the cat, it is both dead and alive. It is in both states, both dead and alive, both 0 and 1. Consider dead as 0 and alive as 1. It is both in 0 and 1. So whenever an observer is not observing the cat, the cat is actually both dead and both alive. So do you understand? Exciting, isn't it? So many cats have died in this experiment, sadly. But this proved a good explanation for quantum superposition. Yeah, did you understand? The cat is actually both alive and dead. So whenever an observer observes it, for example, I'm opening the box. Now the cat is certainly dead, or the cat is certainly alive. Until I open the box, it is both alive and dead. It is staying at two positions, both alive and dead. Do you understand, or should I explain again? I know this can be complicated. If you don't understand me, you can either do research after this today's class about superposition and other cases. But I hope to give you a basic understanding of what is superposition and the other stuff. So do you understand about superposition? So the cat is in superposition actually. The cat is both alive and dead, meaning it is in superposition. The cat is in actually superposition. The cat is both alive and dead. So it is actually in superposition. Well, we are going to use this same topic, same theory in our quantum computing. You'll be making a qubit go to superposition. That is, it is both at 0 and at 1. We will be making a qubit go to superposition. It will be better understandable when we actually run the code. So don't worry if you don't understand. You will understand it better when we run the code. When I run the code, I'll explain it once more. So don't worry. And another one is entanglement. All right. So I'll find a good picture for entanglement. Yeah, this one's good. Over here. I'll just download it. So yeah, here is a good example of entanglement. Let's say there are two atoms. One atom is in my home, in my house, and another atom is in, let's say, above, beyond the Milky Way universe or beyond our universe. One atom is here and another atom is beyond the Milky Way universe. So if these two atoms are entangled, if these two atoms or electrons, any quantum information is entangled, if these two quantum particles are entangled, the atom in my home and the atom above the beyond the universe of the Milky Way, or beyond our whole universe, beyond the Milky Way galaxy or beyond our whole universe, there is some atom in the space. All right. So let's say these two atoms are entangled. Entanglement is not physical joining or physical interruption between two atoms. It actually, well, of course, you can't be seen. You can call it as entanglement. So what will happen is the position of this atom, let's say this atom is on my home and this atom is above, beyond the Milky Way galaxy. So the position of this atom, if this atom is rolling down, this atom will roll up. The position of this atom will affect the position of this atom. If this atom is rolling downwards, this atom will roll upwards. If this atom is rolling upwards, this atom will roll downwards. That is actually entanglement is all about. When two atoms are entangled, no matter how far they are separated, the changing of this atom will affect this atom. When this atom is changed, this atom will be affected. Similarly, when this atom is changed, this atom will be affected. So that's all about entanglement. One atom will affect the other atom if they two are entangled. It's not necessarily atom. It can be electron or protons, something like that. But position of one quantum particle will affect the position of other quantum particle if they both are entangled. So are we clear? Yeah, alive and dead are assumptions. Can be both alive and dead. It's actually assumption. But Schrodinger actually proved the entanglement concept, the superposition concept using that experiment. It means till we open the box, cat can't be assumed in both the position. Yeah, till we open the box. That is after the 1 hour mark. What Schrodinger is saying is after 1 hour, the cat can be it is enough time for the radioactive material to be decayed and not to be decayed. It can be either decayed or not to be decayed, the radioactive material. It is enough time for both. So till you open that, the cat will be both in dead and alive position till you open and observe the cat. Until someone observes, it stays in superposition. What is entanglement meaning? That's what I'm telling. The two particles are being connected by some force, not a physical force, but some sort of force. All right, so if everyone's clear, let's move on to the coding. I guess we have seen enough theory. Should I explain something again? If you're not understanding anything, I'm not trying to give you a full-fledged explanation about the mathematics and stuff. I'm trying to give you a basic understanding of what entanglement is, what qubit is, and what superposition is. So if you didn't understand anything, ask me again and I'll explain it to you again. If you don't understand these three topics, entanglement, superposition, and qubit, you won't understand the coding. So there should be a physical force, right? A microscopic physical force. Well, I don't know if it's microscopic physical force, but there is no physical force. There's no actual physical force. But some sort of force binds these two quantum particles. These two quantum particles bonded by some sort of forces. These forces made those two quantum particles to behave properly according to the other quantum particle. Let's say if this quantum particle is spinning upwards, this one is spinning downwards. Explain again shortly. All right. So first, I'll start by qubit, bits and qubit. So what is a bit? Bit can either be 100% 0 or 100% 1. Qubit can be 70% 0, 30% 1, 50% 0, 50% 1, can be proportions of 0 and 1, percentages of 0 and 1. However, a bit can be either 100% 0 or 100% 1. It can't be proportions of 0 and 1. So bits make the quantum classical computer and qubits make the quantum computer. So the largest quantum computer with the largest number of qubits is, I guess, Google's 60 qubit quantum computer. Humans have been only able to produce 60 qubits. Why creating a qubit is so hard? Because a qubit is actually stored in place which is colder than the deep space. You know, the space is the coldest place, and these qubits are stored at a place where it is colder than deep space. It is stored at a place where it's colder than our deep space, the coldest place we ever know. Our qubits are stored right there because we don't need any interruption from the surrounding. So it needs to be at a colder place. That's why we are storing our qubits in a colder place, coldest place, I can say. And then about entanglement. I guess you can be pretty sure about entanglement. Entanglement is not a tough topic. Let's say this quantum particle will affect this quantum particle. So when this quantum particle spins upwards, this quantum particle will spin downwards. If it spins downwards, it will spin upwards. So a movement of a certain quantum particle will affect the movement of another quantum particle if they both are being entangled. If two particles have been entangled, the movement of one quantum particle will affect another quantum particle. We'll actually see this in coding in our Google Colab. And about superposition. I guess it's pretty hard to get superposition. Well, I'll find a good image. Yeah, I'll explain the same topic. Okay. Because this is a famous experiment. This is what proved superposition to everyone. Many have experimented this experiment. So this experiment, what actually shows is after 1 hour mark, the radioactive material will be enough decayed. It can be enough decayed to release the hammer, or it cannot be enough decayed to release the hammer. So both cases are possible. So at the 1 hour mark, the cat is both dead and alive until someone observes the cat. So if you open the box and observe the cat, you are observing its position. So it may be dead at that time, at that particular time when you observe. But before you observe, the cat was both dead and alive. It was both in two states. It was in the two states. Observing means not only seeing on your eye. You can see the rotten smell of the cat when it's dead. That is the case of observing. Even an atom which observes the cat will be considered as observing. This is just a huge representation of what superposition is. Huge particle representation. We are using humans and alive elements to represent what superposition is. This is not the actual superposition where it's happened. This is a good explanation of what a superposition can be. So the cat stays both dead and alive. Well, in qubits, I told you this is what a qubit will look like. The circle right here, it is actually a sphere. So consider the up arrow as 0 and the down arrow as 1. So what will happen is a qubit will stay both at 0 and 1 at the same time. It will stay at 0 and it will stay at 1. It will stay at both the places at the same time. That is called a superposition. An atom which will stay at both 0 and 1 at the same time. That is superposition. So are we clear still? Can we connect by that? If one company rise, another will fail. Well, which is that exact connection? Which company rises, which company will fail? Well, someone give me a good example. Maybe TikTok fails and Tick rises, another company rises. That would be a good example. Well, TikTok was drawn down and a new app called TickTick was invented by Indians, I guess. It was getting famous in the market. So one quantum particle, it's not a quantum particle actually. One app is affecting the growth of another app. This app's growth is going down and this one's going upward. So that might be a good explanation. Yeah. In India, Jio raised Idea, Vodafone, etc. are falling. Yeah, that's a good explanation too. So Jio is particularly entangled with Idea and Vodafone maybe. Jio and Idea are entangled. Jio and Vodafone are entangled. Superposition and entanglement. All right. So consider superposition as something you're doing two things at the same time. Consider it as like that. So you're keeping a cat in a box. That will be the best explanation I can find in the internet, because this is explained by Schrodinger, the scientist. It was the best explanation to give about superposition, the easiest explanation in which a common man can understand superposition. So what is basically trying to say is, when before some observer observes a particular atom or any particle, which is quantum particle, before observer observes it, it's both in upward state and the downward state. Actually, a electron or a atom, it spins in all direction, and an electron spins in all direction around the atom. Well, I'll see if I can find a good picture. I'll just say atom. Yeah, here is one. So you can see an atom has electrons spinning around it. These electrons will be all around the atom at a certain time. If you observe this atom, you can see the electron at a single position. So you can see the atom is the electron is spinning around the atom in this part, in this path, in this path, in this path. So it's spinning in all the sides. A single electron is spinning in all the sides. But when you observe it, it will spin in only one side. Before you observe it, it will be spinning in all sides. But when you observe it, it will spin in one side. A good example will be this. So consider this as a one electron, a single electron. It's spinning in this side, and this side. But when you are observing that electron, it will spin on only one side. before you observe that electron, it will spinning on both three sides. That is a good explanation of superposition. And about entanglement, well, I would say the geo example was good. You can just consider two atoms or two quantum particles. The movement of one quantum particles affect the movement of another quantum particle. If this quantum particle spins this side, so the same explanation can explain, I guess. Let's say I'm having two atoms across the universe. So if this atom, this electron spins this side, another atom will spin that side. The other electron will spin the opposite side. If this spins in the positive side, this will spin in the negative side. So that would be a good explanation for entanglement. So are we clear? I guess we are taking more time to explain the theoretical topics. I hoped it to finish sooner. All right, clear, right? So let me go to the coding. We have actually taken too much time. Do you guys mind if we take 20 minutes extra finishing our today's session? Or do you want to go straight away at 4? No problem, okay. All right, that's nice. So before we proceed, let me make sure you all are clear about superposition, entanglement, and qubits. So someone explained me about qubit, someone explained me about superposition, and someone explained me about entanglement. I need 3 answers. Only 3 answers. There are 33 people in this webinar, so I'm expecting at least 3 answers. Come on. So that I can be sure. Was I not clear? Okay. The movement of one atom affects the movement of another. That is entanglement. What about the other two? Pratiksha gave me about entanglement. Naren. Qubit consists of a probability of 1 as some percentage and 0 of some percentage. Good explanation. Nice. And superposition is yet to be explained. Qubit. Superposition. Yeah, Ratiksha. Existence of multiple states at the same time. Yeah, great. She was right at the point. So I hope everyone's clear about it. So let's continue. So these are the topics we need to understand before we get into quantum computing actually. So since we did it, we need to install 2 things, Qiskit and Matplotlib. So what is Qiskit? Well, Qiskit is developed by some developers, Python developers, to perform quantum computing using Python. There's a company called Qiskit. It is a Python library actually, Qiskit is. So you can actually install it in Python and use it with Python. Don't worry too much about it. It is actually connected to IBM, so you can run IBM Watson's quantum computer from your home, from Google Colab, from anywhere. So that's why we need Qiskit to perform quantum computing. So pip install Qiskit will do the job, and pip install Matplotlib. Matplotlib is a plotting library. We need to plot our results, right? Whenever we are getting results from the quantum computer, we need to plot them. That's why we are going to use Matplotlib. Then I'm importing those 2 things. If you're not familiar with Python, you're actually consider it as importing a library, importing some code from other things, from other people. So a library is basically code from other people. So we are importing a code called Qiskit library from Qiskit library. And then I'm importing Matplotlib inline. So these 2 things you need to do before you start any quantum computing project in your Colab. You need to install them and import them. These are 2 things you need to do. As I said, Qiskit is a package in Python for doing everything you'll need in quantum computing. So we are installing it. Qiskit is being installed. Matplotlib is being installed. So you can either press the run button or control plus enter. It will be installed. Downloading. All right. It's taking some time. Let's wait. Let me see if there are any doubts. You can ask for doubts until the downloads. You can ask for doubts anytime actually. I see. Yeah, it's been downloaded. So the next thing we need to do is, yeah, it's been downloaded. And once you run it, you can see some number in your run the cell, because it's the number of cell which you run. This is the first cell I'm running, so it's showing me 1. If I have not run any cell, it will not show any number between it. So it will be a good tip for you. All right. So I'll zoom it a little bit. I've done this cell, and I'm gonna run this. Import those 2 things, Qiskit and Matplotlib. I'm gonna import them. Don't worry about these things. We are just installing and importing the necessities to write a quantum computing code. Now I need to load my IBM account. So before I load my IBM account, what are the necessities? I told you I need this token for loading my IBM account. Oh my God. Yeah. I need this token for loading my IBM account. What I did was I copied the token and pasted it in token.txt. So what I'm going to do is I can actually upload files in my Colab. So how am I going to upload it? I'll go here and click on this one, the files part. Click here and I'll say upload. And I'll click on desktop. Go to token.txt. Yeah, here is it. Token. Open. Okay. So the token.txt has been uploaded to my Google Colab. Whenever you run your Google Colab, you need to upload it. Okay. So once you've been uploaded it, I'm saying from Qiskit load IBM Q. IBM Q stands for IBM Quantum Experience. And I'm gonna say save account open token.txt. I'm gonna save account by my token, by my account token. This is my token. Take this token and save that account to my collaboratory. I'm going to use this account to run my quantum codes. That's what I'm saying. IBMQ.save account. So I'm going to save my account using my token. Then load account. I'm going to load my account. So I'll run it. All right. So I'm getting an error. License required. You need to accept the license, I guess. Let me paste this code. All right. Let me now open it. I'll delete it and upload my file again. Okay, I guess this will do. And I'll run it again. I guess I have some problem with my account. Yeah. Okay, let me check my Google. So I probably not verified my account. That might be the problem. So I'll check my email and check for a verification email from quantum computing. Then I'll verify it. That will do it. All right. Now I'll. Okay. So I'm sorry. Actually, the credentials are already present, so I don't need to do it again. Actually, it's showing me credentials are already present, so I'm sorry for the miss thing. It's saying me credentials are already present. I've already set those credentials in my Google account, so it's saying me it's already present. Why are you doing it again? So I've been worried about it. So I'm sorry. Don't worry about it. My account is all set. Sorry for the inconvenience, by the way. All right, so let's go and start creating a quantum circuit. First, to create a quantum circuit, you need both quantum resistor and classical resistor. Why we need both quantum resistor and classical resistor? Well, a quantum resistor will measure you qubits, will create you qubits. A classical resistor will create you classical bits. So why do we need classical bits and both qubits? Because when we are creating a quantum computer, when we are storing some information in our qubit, we can't measure something from a qubit right away. We need a classical bit to measure from a qubit. That's why we are creating both classical bit and qubits. So what I'm doing is, I'm saying QR equals Q dot quantum resistor 2. I'm creating two quantum resistors. I'll say run it. I'll run it. It's been run. And then I'll create two classical resistor. Run. Now what I'll say is Q dot quantum circuit. I'm going to create a quantum circuit which contains two quantum resistors and two classical resistors. My QR contains quantum resistors, which is two quantum resistors. And my CR contains classical resistors, which has two classical resistors in it. And I'll say circuit dot draw. This draw is a really good function which draws our qubits, which draws our quantum circuit. So it's saying me, I'm having two qubits, qubit 0, qubit 1, classical bit 0, classical bit 1. So what I've done is, I've created two quantum resistors, two classical resistors, and I created a quantum circuit using that quantum resistor and classical resistor. So to create a quantum resistor, you just need to say Q dot quantum resistor and the number of quantum resistors you need. I'm saying 2 because I need two quantum resistors. And here I'm saying 2 because I need two classical resistors. And then I'm creating a quantum circuit with two quantum resistors and two classical resistors. Then I'm saying circuit dot draw. I'm saved it in a name called circuit. Then I'm saying circuit dot draw. So I'm basically drawing the circuit, visualizing the circuit. So for now, I'm not done any operations in my circuit. That's why it's giving me Q0, Q1, C0, C1. Q0 stands for quantum 0, qubit 0, qubit 1, classical bit 0, and classical bit 1. So anyone has any doubts till now? Has any doubts until now? Please to ask your doubts. Are we clear about quantum resistor, classical resistor, quantum circuit? Are we clear or should I explain again? All right, I'll explain again. So I'm creating three things: quantum resistor, a classical resistor. First, I loaded my IBM account. Then I'm saying quantum resistor, classical resistor. So what is a quantum resistor? Quantum resistor helps us to create quantum bits, qubits, which is this one. These are qubits. And classical resistor helps us to create bits, which is bits. These are bits, 0 and 1. These both are bits. So quantum resistor helps us create qubits, and classical resistors helps us create bits. So I've run my quantum resistor and I've run my classical resistor. Then I created a circuit using my quantum resistor and a classical resistor. So to create a circuit, you can give quantum circuit QR, CR. QR stands for quantum resistor. I'm passing this whole quantum resistor to this circuit. And CR stands for classical resistor. I'm passing this whole classical resistor to the circuit. That's what I'm doing. Circuit equals Q dot quantum circuit. Then I'm drawing the whole circuit. Q00 stands for qubit 0, qubit 1, classical bit 0, classical bit 1. So I'm creating two quantum bits, two qubits, and two classical bits. Clear? Import token and libraries. So we are importing two things: Qiskit SQ and Matplotlib inline. We are importing Qiskit and Matplotlib, installing them and importing them. That's it. So are we clear? All right. So once you're done with creating your quantum circuit, the next thing we need to do is we need to apply gates to our circuit. You've heard about gates, right? NOT gate, OR gate, AND gate. How many of you heard about gates in your? I think you had heard about in your 8th standard physics itself. You know about gates, right? Everyone? So now we are going to use quantum gates. Quantum gates are more of a matrix rather than gates. It's more of a matrix sort of structure. You won't be needing the theory and the mathematics part. So I'll just say NOT gate. What does a NOT gate does? You all know about a NOT gate. What does a NOT gate does? Come on, someone. What does a NOT gate does? NOT gate. NOT gate reverses the condition. That's right. So we are first going to apply a NOT gate to the circuit. So I'm going to say circuit.x. X stands for NOT gate in quantum. So I'm going to apply a NOT gate to the circuit. So what will happen is our qubit will point to the opposite direction. So when you're creating qubit, your qubit will basically be in the 0 direction. It will point at 0. So when I'm applying a NOT gate to the 0th qubit, I'm having 2 qubits, 0th qubit and the first qubit. So I'm actually applying NOT gate to the 0th qubit. When I'm applying NOT gate to the 0th qubit, it will point at the 1. When I'm applying NOT gate to the first qubit, it will point at 0. It will point at 1, 2. So I'm applying NOT gate to my 0th qubit. So it will point at 1 from 0. It will basically be at 0. When I'm applying NOT gate to it, it will point at 1. Then I'm drawing the circuit. So that's it. So my 0th qubit has been applied a NOT gate. So what will happen is my 0th qubit will point at 1 now. The qubit will basically be at 0. When I'm applying NOT gate, it will point at 1. It will inverse the direction, so it will point at 1. So I'm using a NOT gate in my 0th qubit. Next thing, I'm going to draw my circuit using Matplotlib. Circuit.draw, output equals Matplotlib. We drew our circuit normal form. And here, I'm going to use Matplotlib to draw my circuit. These both are the same actually. Well, if I run it, these both are the same actually. Well, this gives a good representation of what a circuit is. This gives a basic representation. This gives a colorful representation. This is a basic representation. That's the difference. So we are going to draw a circuit using Matplotlib. I'm saying qubit 0 is being used by NOT gate. It's been passed with a NOT gate. And qubit 1 stays the same. And classical bit 1 and 0, they stay the same. Qubit 0 has a NOT gate to it. Qubit 1 has no gates to apply to it. And classical bits 1 and 0, we are not doing any operations to them. Qubit 0 has NOT gate. That's it. I'm drawing it using Matplotlib. To get your drawing using Matplotlib, you can just say output equals MPL. That's it. Now we need to create our entanglement. So we have been talking about entanglement. Now we can actually create an entanglement and see how it works. So I'm going to create an entanglement. Circuit.cx. What does CX stands for? Controlled X, actually controlled NOT. So what will happen if my first qubit, 0th qubit is 1, first qubit will also become 1. If my 0th qubit is 0, first qubit will stay at 0. If my 0th qubit becomes 1, first qubit will also become 1. So if this one, the parameter we pass, this qubit is 1, it will become 1. Or if it is not 1, it will stay at the same part. So we are creating an entanglement. If my 0th qubit is 1, that is we already applied an NOT gate to a 0th qubit. So it will become 1. So if my 0th qubit is 1, my first qubit will become 1, 2. Now I'll draw my Matplotlib and run it. So here I'm having my NOT gate. So if this qubit becomes 1, my first qubit will become 1, 2. So we are basically creating an entanglement within 0th qubit and the first qubit. So we made a qubit, we created a qubit, and then we applied a NOT gate to it. Or NOT gate, you know what a NOT gate does. A qubit stays at 0 when it's starting. When it's created, it stays at 0. A qubit stays at 0. So when we do an entanglement, what actually happens, when you do a NOT gate, what actually happens, it will go from 0 to 1. Then I'm doing controlled X. We are creating an entanglement. So when my 0th qubit is 1, first qubit will also become 1. When my 0th qubit is 0, first qubit will stay at 0. The state of my 0th qubit will affect my first qubit. you can see the second qubit will return 1 only if the first qubit is 1. So this is the second qubit and the first qubit. The second qubit will return 1 only if the first qubit is 1. We have done our circuit. Our circuit has been created. Now we need to measure our qubit using our classical bits. As I told you, we can't know what our qubit contains until we measure it using classical bit. By measuring it with a classical bit, we are actually placing an observer to observe our qubits. So it will come to a steady state. It will come to a steady state. And before we observe it, it will be at an so position. You can call it, it will stay at all state. When some observer is observing it, it comes at a steady state. So what I'm doing is, I'm measuring my 2 qubits using my 2 classical bits. So 2 qubits which are staying there is being measured by 2 classical bits. I can just say circuit.measure QR, CR. What is QR? QR is my quantum register, and CR is my classical register. So I'm measuring my quantum register using my classical register. Then I'm drawing the output. So this is okay. I measured it twice. That shouldn't happen. So I need to do it from the beginning because I measured it twice. I need to create my circuit again. And I'll create an OR gate again. Prod using matplotlib. Using a controlled NOT. Now I'm measuring it. All right. So am I clear until now? Am I clear until now? About the operations? No doubts. You want me to explain again, someone? If I need to explain again, say explain again. I'll explain again. Measuring part again. Okay, sure. So what I'm doing is, I'm measuring my qubits, my quantum bits using my classical bits. So why am I measuring my quantum bits using my classical bits? Because if you don't measure our quantum bits are actually real electrons, real superconducting electrons. We are using superconducting electrons as our quantum bits. So we need to measure it using a classical bit to know the exact position of that qubit. For example, when I placed it in one position using an OR gate, it will be directed to the opposite position. Or if the qubit was at 0, it will go to 1. If it was at 1, it will go to 0. But we can't know the exact position of it until we measure it. We can't see it until we measure it. So we need to measure. We need the observer to measure it. So measuring it using a classical bit is basically an observer measuring it. You can consider it like the observer who's observing the cat out of the box. That is it is similar way in this quantum bit. You don't need a real observer like our eye. A classical bit is an observer for that quantum bit. An observer is observing it and measuring that qubit, taking its current state, the current state of that qubit when it measures it. That's why we need measuring. Without measuring, we can't say at which place our qubit is. So am I clear? Thanks, Beena. Miss Beena. All right. So before running our code in a real quantum computer, let's first run it in a simulator and see the results, okay? So to get the simulator, I need to initialize it. So there are many backends in our Qiskit library. So don't worry about the commands actually. I will tell you tomorrow briefly about the commands. Since we are out of time, I'm just explaining it roughly, okay? I'll tell you about the commands briefly tomorrow. So simulator, I'm saying q.aer.get backend Quasum simulator. So I'm saying qiskit.aer get backend. I'm getting a backend. And the backend is called Quantum Simulator. We are simulating a quantum computer. We are not going to use a real quantum computer right now. We are simulating a real quantum computer in our system. We are going to simulate a real quantum computer. And then when you are done with the simulator, we need to run our circuit using the simulator. Before we run it using a real quantum computer, we need to run it using a simulator and check our circuit. So I'll say simulator equals q.aer.get backend Quasum simulator. So I'm using a simulator called Quasum simulator. There are 3 simulators actually. I'm using Quasum simulator. And then I'm saying job q.execute quantum the qubit. We are going to execute the qubit. The circuit we just created. I'm going to pass the circuit. This is the circuit I just created. This is the whole circuit. I'm going to pass the circuit. I'm going to execute the circuit using the backend simulator, this simulator, Quasum simulator. Backend equals simulator I'm giving because I'm using this simulator. Then I'm saying result equals job.result. Take the result from this particular output. Don't worry about the code again. We're just running it. I'll explain it better tomorrow. Then I'm saying get counts. So using get counts, I'm actually getting the count of my qubits. What is the count of my qubits? Both the 0th qubit and the first qubit. There are 2 qubits, right? I'm getting the counts of my qubit. Which is the probability of them being 0 and 1? That is the count I'm getting. So I'm running it. Done. I got the counts. Now, Qiskit tools visualization import plot histogram. This plot is called as histogram plot. So I'll just plot it. What am I getting? 1, 1. The part is fully 1. It's saying the probability of my qubit being 1 and 1 is 100%. Why is it? Because first thing, we changed our first qubit. This is our first qubit and this is our second qubit. Okay. We changed our first qubit to 1 when we applied our NOT gate. And we changed our second qubit to 1 when we applied a entanglement between our first qubit and second qubit. We changed our first qubit to be 1, we applied a NOT when we applied a NOT gate. And we changed our second qubit to be 1 when we applied a controlled NOT gate. What does a controlled NOT gate means? When our first qubit is 1, the second qubit should also be 1. When our first qubit is 0, the second qubit should also be 0. That is what control NOT gate signifies. So do you understand this output? Why are we getting this output? Do you understand it? No, 2 classical bits are observing 2 qubits. That's why you created 2 classical bits. Do you understand why are we getting this exact output? Everyone? Yeah? All right. So let me change in a code before I run it in a real quantum computer, okay? Let me change a code a little bit, okay? So I'll go above to the place where we just created our quantum circuit. I'll run it again. I'll run my circuit again, create my circuit again, make it blank. And instead of an X gate, I'm going to apply something called as H gate. So what is a H gate? H gate is superposition. I've been talking about superposition, right? We are going to place our 0th qubit in superposition. H gate is actually superposition. I'm going to place my 0th qubit in superposition. It can be both 0 and 1. All right? Our 0th qubit will be both in 0 and 1 at the same time until we observe it. Until we measure it, our 0th qubit will be both at 0 and at 1. I'm doing that here. Then I'm saying circuit.draw. So here I'm having my H gate, which is superposition. H stands for superposition. So my 0th qubit will be both at 0 and 1 at the same time. Then I'm drawing it using matplotlib. And I'm using a controlled NOT. So this is exciting, right? Our qubit will be both at 0 and 1. So sometimes when you measure it, it can be collapsed to 0. Sometimes when you measure the 0th qubit, it will collapse to 0. Sometimes when you measure it, it will collapse to 1. Because whenever you measure it, only it collapses to either 0 or 1. Until you measure it, it stays both at 0 and at 1. So when you measure it, it collapses to either 0 or 1. So when this one collapses to 0, this one will be 0 too. And this one collapses to 1. Our first qubit is 1, 2, because it is a control NOT gate, right? If this one becomes 1, this will become 1. If this one stays 0, this will stay 0. This qubit will stay 0. So that is exciting. If my H collapses to 0, Q1 also becomes 0. If my H collapses to 1, Q1 also becomes 1. So that is a matter of probability. So we've done it, and we are going to measure our quantum gate. All right, we measured it. So it will be either collapsed to 0 or 1 right now because I have measured it. Until I measured it, it was both in 0 and 1. We can visualize these things better in tomorrow's class. I have an idea. We can visualize these things better. We can visualize a qubit, how it is collapsed to 0, how it's collapsed to 1. We can actually visualize it using a different thing. So don't worry if you are not grasping the entire concept. I'm keeping in mind of the both three classes. That's why I'm dropping all the topics at the same time to you. So don't worry if you don't exactly get all the topics. We'll see some topics tomorrow, and then you'll get a better understanding of what we saw today. Okay. So what I'm doing is I created a Hadamard gate. Hadamard gate stands for superposition. I created a superposition for 0th qubit and then a controlled NOT gate for first qubit. So when this one collapses to 1, this will become 1, 2. Now I'm measuring it. Until I measure it, it will be at both 0 and 1. But when I measure it, it will become either 0 or 1. Okay. By measuring, I'm saying I'm observing it. This is my cat, and my classical bit measuring it, that is some observer, some man is opening the cardboard of the cat box, and it's seeing if it's dead or alive. So we are actually measuring, we are observing the cat, which is in our case our qubit. Okay. Next thing is we'll run our code in our simulator and get the counts. So here in the previous we got only one count about both being 1. First qubit was 1, second qubit was 1. Over here I'm getting 2 counts, 0 0 1 1, because in this case both are possible. Both 0 0 is possible and 1 1 is possible. It depends upon the superposition of my first qubit. If my first qubit collapses to 0, it will become 0. The second qubit will become 0. If it collapses to 1, the second qubit will become 1. That's what I'm doing. Now when I refresh it, run it again, here I'm getting 2 probabilities. So the probability of my first qubit being 0 and the second qubit being 0 is 0.48%. The probability of being my both qubits 1 and 1 is 0.52%. And don't be sure about this probability. Every time I run my quantum circuit, every time I run my qubit, this probability will change actually, because the state of electrons will be actually changing. These probabilities will be actually changing. If I run it again, I will get a different set of probabilities. So these probabilities will be actually changing because it is a real electron, right? These probabilities will be changed. So are we clear about the Hadamard gate? Are we clear? Should I explain again? Any doubts, guys? Please ask your doubts, or I won't know if I'm clear. Should I explain something again? Please ask. I'll explain again gladly. So is everyone clear? Actually, I'm getting only 3 replies. I'm expecting more. There are 24 people. Oh my. All right, that's better. All right, I know it's annoying to type in the chat box every time I ask you, but I'm gonna keep asking anyways. All right, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick up my provider. Now I'm gonna get IBM Q. IBM Q is the real IBM quantum computer. I'm gonna get this provider for me. So I'll run it and get this provider. IBM Q.get provider. IBM quantum computer, the real IBM quantum computer. I'm getting that provider. I'm doing the same things actually. When I ran in the simulator, I said simulator, Quasum simulator. I'm gonna do the same thing using this provider. First, I'll get my provider saying IBM Q. Then don't worry about this code actually, because in this code, I'm actually listing the quantum computers available. I'm saying list me all the quantum computers and print the qubits available. Please don't ignore this code. Just look at the results of this code. This is not needed for this training session. If you're already familiar with Python, you would understand this code. If you're not, don't worry, it's fine. So I'm basically listing all the quantum computers. You can see this in your quantum account too. Over here, it's showing me IBM Quasum simulator. It is one of the simulators backends I'm having. IBM 16 Melbourne. These are the places where I'm having quantum computers. IBM Ausens, IBM XQ, IBM Vigo, IBM London, IBM Burlington, IBM Misex, IBM Armonk. So these are the quantum backends, quantum computing backends that is really available in the real world. So what I'm doing is I'm printing all the quantum backends and the number of qubits it has. So first, IBM Quasum simulator. It is a simulator, so it doesn't have any qubits. IBM QX2, it has 5 qubits. It has 5 qubits in it, 5 qubit quantum computer. And Melbourne, it is a 15 qubit quantum computer. And Vigo, it is a 5 qubit quantum computer. And Austin, it is a 5 qubit quantum computer. London, 5 qubit quantum computer. Burlington, 5 qubit quantum computer. And ESEX, 5 qubit. Armonk, 1 qubit quantum computer. And Rome, 5 qubit quantum computer. So these are the quantum computers available in IBM. These are all the quantum computers available in IBM. This is the highest qubit quantum computer, I guess. Melbourne with the 15 qubit quantum computer. It has 15 qubits ready in it. Actually, creating these qubits are really hard tasks. So you should really thank IBM for letting us use our quantum computer, because I hope using a quantum computer is like controlling a satellite, Actually, there are lesser quantum computers than there is satellites in the space. It's like controlling a satellite in your space. You're giving given control of your satellites, which is circulating along the space, and you can just code and control the place where the satellite goes. This is similar to that. It's that much exciting, because giving the access of quantum computers to civilians like us, it's really a good initiative and a good opportunity, so that we can learn many things. It's like giving off a satellite to learn. It's really good effort by IBM. So I'm going to choose the highest qubit one, IBM 16 Meltdown. What I need to do is, I'm going to say QCOM provided or get a backend IBM 16 Meltdown. We've done it already in the simulator, right? We've done the same things. I'm just here, when I'm getting the simulator, I said Quasum simulator. Here I'm saying IBM 16 Meltdown. I'm just modifying the names. Instead of Quasum simulator, I'm saying IBM 16 Meltdown. Then I'm going to say q.execute circuit backend equals QCOM. I've done the same thing again. q.execute circuit backend equals simulator. Over here, I'm saying QCOM because I've defined this variable as QCOM. That's why I'm saying backend equals QCOM. Then I'm saying from qiskit.tools.monitor import job monitor. I'm going to monitor my job. Actually, why am I not running my job is because it will actually take you 5 minutes or much minutes, because there will be students or researchers who will be running their code in quantum computer. If I run these things now, it will take us 5 more minutes to wait in the line, because they will finish the quantum computing job. Then only we will be allowed to run our job, run our quantum computers. So if you run this cell, we will wait for a minimum of 5 minutes, I guess, for us to get our job done. So it will take this single cell to be 5 minutes to be run. So that's why I'm not running it. I've already have the outputs. Don't worry. So after your job has been run, it will take you some minutes. When your job is running, it will show you the job is running, job is queued. And when your job is done, you will get this output. Job status, job has successfully run. That is the status you'll be getting. And then I'm saying result equals job.result. We did the same thing here. Job.result. Then I'll say result.get counts. I'm going to do the same thing. Get counts, circuit, print counts. Now I'm printing the counts from the job. If you notice something, I've only got 2 results in my simulator. When I simulated in my simulator, I've only got 2 results, 0, 0, 1, 1. However, in my real quantum computer, I'm getting 4 results, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0. This is the results from a real quantum computer. When I ran it in a simulator, I got only 2 results. When I'm running it in a real quantum computer, I'm getting 4 results. Why is that? Let's plot it and see. So the plot will look like this. So 0, 0, 475, 1, 1. I told you the probabilities will change, right? The 0, 0 and 1, 1 probabilities has been changed. And what about the 0, 1 and 1, 0? We didn't get it in our simulator. Now simulator, we got only 0, 0 and 1, 1. Because a simulator is actually simulating a perfect quantum computer. However, we have not yet attained perfect quantum computer, because even when they store their qubits in deep, coldest temperature we ever know, the qubit will have some vibration. Those vibration from outside world, like it might be a slight rise in temperature, or it might be slight noise, slight vibration, slight physical vibration. Any small vibration will disturb the qubit, and these are the errors we are getting. These are basically errors from the vibration, from the atmosphere, from the environment of that particular quantum computer. So the quantum computer environment will be kept particularly silent and very cold. The qubits will be placed at a silent and cold place. That is the reason. But even if there is a minute vibration in the air, it will cause you these errors. These errors are relative. Every quantum computer will have these errors. They haven't yet found a way to rectify all of these errors. There are some ways. I would teach you, if time permits, in our last class. I'll teach you how to minimize these errors in your quantum computer. And over here, the main part you should focus is 0, 0 and 1, 1. These 2 probabilities. As I said, these probabilities are varied. 0, 0 is now showing 475 and 1, 1 is showing 405. Over here, 1, 1 was larger than 0, 0. Here, 0, 0 is larger than 1, 1. So as I told you, the things change. the qubit, the values of the qubit change. It might be 475, it might be 420. The values of the qubit, the probabilities change because it is actually a real electron, right? It may spin at the positive direction, the negative direction. At the point you measure it, it will be at some probability. The probabilities might change. So that's it. Are we clear? Oh, yeah, that's a good question. If two classical bits measures 2 qubits, then why C0 alone visible in measure? Well, actually, it's two. The plot is like that. It's telling C0, but it's actually having both C0 and C1. When I measure it, you can see 0 is pointed and 1 is pointed. It is just stacking all those classical bits to a single line because not all quantum circuits will have only 2 qubits and 2 classical bits. Some quantum computers, some quantum circuits may have 20 quantum bits or 15 qubits. There are only 50 qubit computer, right? So 15 qubits and 15 classical bits may be used. That time this plot will be relatively larger. So we don't want that much large plots. So that's why they are stacking the classical bits into a single line so that we don't get any confusion. We will be doing most of the operation in the quantum bits. That's why we are stacking the classical bits in the single line. However, when you are doing the output without matplotlib, it will show you separate classical bits. It is 0, it is 1. With matplotlib, they are stacking them into a single line. And here they are saying 2, meaning 2 classical bits. The next one. Since we are measuring 0th bit, we get that. Get what? Sorry, I guess you answered one of my questions. I'm not really getting which one. And we are plotting the 0th bit, but we can also plot first bit. Actually, you're plotting both qubits. You're plotting the results from the both qubits. Actually, you're confused with the bits and qubits. You will get a better understanding in tomorrow's class. We are going to actually visualize a qubit, visualize a qubit superposition, visualize the entanglement. You will understand all the topics of today's, which you didn't understand clearly, in tomorrow's session. I'm planning to explain it clearly. We are going to visualize our real qubits from a quantum computer. And then you will understand a little bit more better. Using Q in VS Code, you get the results better, or in IBM Q. What is the advantage? VS Code, well, IBM Q is quantum experience separate, and you can actually run this in a Sublime or any other editor, but I prefer Colab because it is simpler to run in Colab. But if you're not importing qubit, importing a Qiskit library, you won't get the same result. But if you're importing the same Qiskit library and doing the same operation in your local environment instead of the supercomputer from Colab, you'll get the same results. If you're running the same code, importing the same things, installing the same things in your own computer, you'll be getting the same results. Don't worry. I would prefer Colab, however. Any other doubts? I think that's it for today's session. I'm sorry I dragged it a little bit. It's already near 4:30. So if you have any doubts, please ask it. Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad you understood it, Mr. Muthu. Thank you so much, Naren. I'm glad you understood it. So please ask your doubts, and don't worry if you don't understand the topics. I'm saying it again because we're going to look into those topics deeper in tomorrow's class. I plan to tell all those topics to you today because I'm going to explain it deeper in tomorrow. We will be visualizing the qubits, then you'll be getting a more deeper understanding of what is inside it. Okay, don't worry at all, and feel free to research about those topics. Research in Google about what is a superposition, what is entanglement, and you can see what is a superconducting qubit. How are quantum computers created? Research about those topics. There are many YouTube videos explaining how are quantum computers created, how it is, what is a qubit, how are qubits stored in a quantum computer, how to measure those qubits. There are many YouTube videos. Make sure you watch some of them to get a better understanding of what we are doing. Thanks, Bina. Thanks, Emmanuel. Thanks, Kwali. Thank you, Manuel. And how do you cool these qubits? Freeze them. Actually, they will be placed in a super freezed temperature. Well, I'll show you the place of my quantum computer. A quantum computer. Where is a quantum computer placed? I'll go to Google and I'll say quantum computer storage place. Well, let's see the images. So yeah, you see these quantum computers. This is the exact representation of a quantum computer. This is a quantum computer. So it's actually lifted from its storage place. It will be actually getted down, in which it will have a super cooling refrigerant. I guess they are cooling it with an liquid cooling, or I'm not sure. I'm not really sure about it. It will look like this when it's inside. When you take it outside, it will look like this. So this is a real quantum computer. When it's inside, it will look like this. When you take it outside, it will look like this. We'll store all those qubits inside this super freezing temperature. Thank you, Lakya. Feedback link. There is no feedback link. Well, I guess it's direct freezing. Well, I'm not sure. I'll make sure to look at it and tell you clarify it tomorrow. I'm not sure how they are doing the cooling process actually. I think they transfer the qubits, transfer the whole computer to a super cooled refrigerant. I'm not really sure. Yeah, you'll be shared the video recording. Don't worry. And make sure you pay because you'll be getting your certificate only when you paid. So make sure you pay. I'll pass on the mic to Mr. Saravanan if he's there. Sir?
Good?
Yeah, sir.
Okay, no problem. So guys, we'll catch you tomorrow then, same time at 3 o'clock. Okay, so you can see us tomorrow, and people who have not made the payment, you can make the payment today or tomorrow, completely fine. And you can attend the session still without making payment, but certificate will be given only to people who make the payment. Okay, we don't want to stop the knowledge for you, so still want to attend, you can attend, and we'll also be sharing the video to you today. Okay, so thank you guys, hope you enjoyed it. So we'll see you guys. It will be the same meeting link. You can use it, and we'll be starting the session tomorrow at same time. Okay, cool. Thank you guys. See you tomorrow then. Bye.